Once more, we are on this beautiful path on a regular hike, and this time we are going to talk about what is man. Now, you might think this is a very old-fashioned gender sort of question. Man, why just man? Why not what is woman? And what is a child? And they're all included in that question. What is man? What is woman? What is child? What is the human individual? That is the question. And you might say, why just what is man? What is such a sort of specific way of thinking about it? Why not why is man? Or where is man? Or when is man? They are actually all the same. In this question, what is man, we mean all of those included. So it's a much deeper question. This question, one way to answer it is, let's say an alien, a Martian, suddenly landed up on Earth and saw, all the bunch of stuff going on here, and identified this strange species of individuals, and figured out that these were humans or man in general. How would they describe us? The first thing they would say is, well, unique amongst all the creatures, this animal is erect, stands up on two legs, and walks around, has the head held high, and well, that is man. And to tell the truth, that's not a bad way to think about it. In fact, it is unique for the human to have the head held high and walking upright. And to tell the truth, how many people actually do it well? If you take that as a very basic physical definition of man or a human person, how many of us actually do that well? I don't think too many. Our postures are bad, our head is bent, back is curved, all kinds of issues start happening in our joints because of this. Just being a better human individual, a better man, a better woman, by having the right posture that is unique to man, is a huge step, not just physically, but also psychologically, for us to be more of who we really are. It's amazing how bodies have been built to follow the head. In some sports, like I took up snowboarding a few years ago, and you just stand there on that board on the slope, and essentially the board goes whichever way you turn your head. Now, why is that? The board doesn't know about your head. It's because the rest of the body works in that way. When you look one way, the body turns towards it. When you look the other way, the body turns towards it. And the body is the follower of the head, the way we are made up. And that's just, I'm talking physiologically. Just physiologically, the body just follows the head. And so it's really important for us to make sure of two things. One is that we are actually headed where we want to be headed. And secondly, that we actually train the body to follow the head well. Let's focus a little bit on the second one. Once you do that, once we have the basic suppleness, the strength, the stamina, then the body is trained and the head is held the right way, and then whichever way the head goes, the body goes, working together in unison, a common purpose. That's just the physiological part, a Martian's view of what is man and how we should be more of a man in the terms of the Martian. Now we come to the other part of what we said. Which way should our head go? It's a much more interesting question, and it boils down to attention and intention. What do we pay attention to? And what do we ignore? Both of them are very important. And also, once we pay attention to something or ignore something, what is our intention towards the rest of the world? Both of these determine which way should our head go. And they're deep psychological questions. So we'll get to that as we go through this talk. Let's turn to another question about what is man. We ask what is man. You can also ask so many other questions. What is deer? What is fish? What's a goose? What's this bay tree? And what's that oak tree? And what's this redwood tree? First of all, isn't it amazing to be surrounded by this bay forest and oak forest and redwood forest and these beautiful rocks? What is man? What is deer? What is trout? What is bay? What is oak? What is redwood? You can say that, hey, these are species of life form. But they are very specific species, very specific life forms. The deer is what the deer is. It has got its 4 legs and its antlers in that shape, and the duck is that shape with its wings and a beautiful flight and the plumage. In the bay, it has these aromatic leaves. The Native Americans used to use them to rub over their bodies before their hunt, so the animals wouldn't get their human scent. Yeah, they're species, they're a certain expression of life form. But it's more dynamic than that. The human person, we have this expression, the head, the body, the erectness, and so on. That is what evolution has given us as the human form. In a way, it constrains us. What we are allowed to express in our form is constrained by the speciation. But we push against it. The bay tree pushes against its form. The redwood tree pushes against its form. The duck, the deer, the trout, the bug, the butterfly, they all push against that form, that limitation, trying to express something more. So there's this constant back and forth, the balance between the constraints that are imposed on us on the expression of our form and the actions, the sports, the thinking, the living that we do, which pushes against those constraints to try to expand them, try to change them. That happens all over the place. Everything is doing that. What's different about man is I can talk about it. You can hear about it. We can understand that's what is going on. And more than understand, we can participate. We can try to figure out what can we do to push that boundary. The Olympic swimmer, they're trying to beat by 1/100th of a second the previous record. And in doing that, they're exploring new ways of the body, new ways of being, of life, of the form, the expression. And same with the runners and the rock climbers and the thinkers, who expand. I mean, they can't do but that, you know. Their expression has compelled them to figure out the boundaries and try to exceed them. That's also part of human, the conscious, deliberate pushing against the boundaries to help us expand. This is my cathedral, a cathedral of tall trees. Just like we said, the species, the form of the species constrains the expression of the individual, and the individual presses against that constraint to change the form of the species. That is fundamental. And this question of man as a person of the human species, of the human collective, that question arises at different scales as well. What is man in society? What is man in the collective? Because we're talking of a collective of the human species. But then how exactly do you define the human species? Maybe today it is clear cut, but as things change over thousands and millions of years, the borders start to get frayed, start to get braided in with other fabrics that are out there. And it's much harder to say, okay, this is where we draw the line. But then this individual and the collective is always an issue. So man in society. In some sense, society is the constraint, and the individual lives in those constraints, but is always pushing against them, more or less. And that dynamic defines the collective itself as well as the individual. That happens all the time. So we asked, what is man? And we said it is this person of a species where the head is held high and the body is erect and the head leads. And consciously this person understands the dynamic between the constraints of the collective, constraints of the form of the species, and the expression of the person that pushes against these constraints, the forms, and makes something new. And this person, where the head leads and the body follows, and many other things follow. And what we follow has to do with the attention and the intention. And those come from many sources. Attention to things around us, in the collective, in the environment, intention of what we want to do with ourselves and the things around us. And we said it is as though, in the ideal form, as though a thread is connected to the top of our head and pulls it up and shapes the form. This thread at the top of the head that shapes the form. That's one way to think about it. But can there be more threads? There can be more threads. What if the thread is at the top of our head and there's a thread, at our eyes, at our throat, at our heart, solar plexus, down below all the way to the base. And there are these threads pulling us in different directions. To what are these connected? Where are they pulling us? How they all work together to hold us up and make us act and move. the other side of the rock that we were just sitting on. We're just going to go behind the scene here, behind this narrow, go through this narrow pass between the rocks, and get out to the other side and see what's here. And we're looking at all these different threads that hold up, connect up the man within himself and herself, as well as with everything else. What if let's say the thread coming out of your solar plexus, that is what is held up. That is what if a Martian comes down and says, hey, man is unique because there's this thing that is holding up its solar plexus, and that is its prominent feature, not the head. We would have been a completely different species, completely different form. But yet, we have all these faculties in us, so we can imagine what it might be like. You have this deep emotional center that is the driving force, that is the defining feature of your existence. And all the other faculties, your intellect, your expression and imagination, your physical body, energy, your life force, everything is channeled towards the satisfaction, towards the elevation, towards the primacy of this emotional center. You would be a very different person. Similarly, what if your expression center, the throat center, was the leading defining feature of the human person? Then all of our intellect would be channeled towards speech and expression, maybe art, maybe just argumentation, who knows, right? All of our energies would have been focused on that. Maybe we would have been excellent singers, or maybe we would just be, loud, obnoxious crows, who knows. So there are these different centers that could be the primary feature of a person, but they are not. The head is, and whatever connects the head up, whatever pulls it up, what is above the head, that is where we are headed, to make a pun. If you look at one of the very poignant stories from the Upanishads, one of the ways of expressing what is man, they analogize the human body to a chariot. This body is a chariot, and the horses pulling the chariot are our senses, the senses turned outwards, taking in all this diverse myriad universe. And left to themselves, the senses, the horses would pull this chariot into all these paths of attention that are leading it on, that are drawing it in. But then there's the mind, which is the reins on these horses. The mind reins them in and says, no, we see all of this, but we're going to channel it. We're going to focus. We're going to pay attention here. We're not going to pay attention there. The mind is the reins on this chariot drawn by these wild horses. And then behind the mind, there's a charioteer, there's the guide, there's the higher purpose, which figures out the intention, where we need to go. And one of the deepest, strongest, biggest, most compelling intentions is, how do we consciously push the boundary between the expression of the individual form and the constraints on that expression by the form of the species. That is where we need to pay attention. That is where intentionally we need to go. And to tell the truth, everything we do, nature uses it towards that intention. But can we do it consciously? Can we do it at an accelerated time scale? That is the deep question. All right, we're out of that gorge.